For months she parked in his driveway like it was her birthright. She didn't ask. She didn't apologize. She just acted like it belonged to her. Until one man finally decided he wasn't going to take it anymore. And what happened next? The whole neighborhood was watching. Reginald Carter. People called him Reggie. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud. He was a middle school science teacher in Lakeland, Florida. The kind of man who could make a classroom of restless kids pay attention with nothing but a steady voice and a patient smile. He lived alone in a modest brick house with a clean front yard, a neat little mailbox, and a driveway just wide enough for his car. It wasn't much, but it was his sanctuary. After long days of grading papers, chasing kids who would rather scroll TikTok than learn the periodic table, that house was peace. Until Blythe Vanderholt showed up. The first time Reggie saw her silver Lexus sitting in his driveway, he thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe a delivery driver blocked her garage. Maybe she was waiting for someone. He gave her the benefit of the doubt. But then it happened again. And again. Always the same dismissive wave of her manicured hand. "Oh, just for a minute, Reggie," she'd say. Or, "I had a delivery. You don't mind, do you?" But he did mind. It wasn't about the car. It was about respect. One Friday evening, Reggie came home exhausted. He'd skipped lunch, he was running on coffee fumes, and all he wanted was to collapse on his couch. But there it was again. The Lexus. Dead center. His driveway. No note. No apology. No respect. Reggie clenched his jaw, walked up to her front door and knocked. When Blythe answered, wine glass in hand, she didn't even look surprised. "Reggie, what's wrong?" she asked, voice dripping with fake innocence. "Your car's in my driveway," he said. Teddy. She smiled like it was a joke. "Oh well, the driver needed room to back out. You don't mind, right?" "I do mind," he said firmly. "I need you to stop parking there." Blythe sighed like he was a child throwing a tantrum. "It's not a big deal, Reggie. You're always on the street anyway." Her tone cut deeper than the words. As if his property didn't matter. As if his boundaries didn't exist. For weeks it continued. Every note he left vanished. Every knock was ignored. One night he came home to not one but two cars in his driveway. A Lexus and a BMW. That was the night something in him shifted. He parked on the street, snapped photos and started making calls. If she thought he would stay quiet forever, she was wrong. Decho gave him nothing but excuses. "Unless there's property damage, sir, we can't get involved." Reggie hung up, shaking his head. He'd never expected them to help. He was on his own. So he left one last note. Big bold letters. "Do not park here again." But when he came home that night, the note was gone. And her Lexus was sitting in his driveway at an angle, like she wanted him to see she didn't care. Reggie didn't knock. He didn't argue. He called the tow truck. The driver showed up fast. "Is that yours?" the man asked. "Nope," Reggie said, handing over his deed. Within minutes, her luxury SUV was chained, lifted and gone. The satisfaction hit him like a wave. But the real storm came an hour later. The front door shook under Blythe's fists. Reggie opened it slowly, calm as ever. She stood there in silk pajamas, blonde bob messy, eyes blazing. "Where is my car?" she snapped. "You mean the one illegally parked in my driveway?" he asked, voice cool. "Don't play games, Reggie. Where is it?" "Towed," he said. One word. Final. Her jaw dropped. "You did what?" "I told you to stop." "You didn't." "So I had it removed." She laughed, a wild, ugly laugh. "You're going to regret this. I'm on the HOA board. I have connections." "Good for you," he said. "Your car's at Sunshine Towing. Have a good night." And he shut the door. But Blythe wasn't done. She called the cops. When they arrived, she pointed at his house like he was a criminal. "He stole my car," she screamed. The officer turned to Reggie. "Sir." Reggie calmly handed over his deed. "She parked on my driveway. I had it towed. The officer nodded. He's within his rights, ma'am. The way her face turned red. Reggie would never forget it. But Blythe didn't back down. She doubled down. Choe complaints, flyers, petty harassment. She even stole his trash cans. And still she thought she could win. What she didn't know was that the neighborhood was watching. They had seen it all. And when the downfall came, it wasn't quiet. It was public. It was brutal. And for the first time in years, Blythe Vanderholt wasn't in control. The next morning, Reggie left for school a little earlier than usual. He wanted to beat the rush of traffic, but in truth, he just didn't want to see her face. Still, as he pulled onto the main road, he caught sight of Blythe standing at the end of her driveway, silk robe flapping in the wind, phone pressed to her ear, pacing furiously. She looked like a queen stripped of her crown. When Reggie came home that evening, he half expected her Lexus to be back in his driveway out of spite. But it wasn't there. For the first time in weeks, his driveway was empty, waiting only for his car. For a second he thought maybe she'd finally learned. Maybe she'd finally gotten the message. He almost smiled. Almost. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No cars blocking his driveway. No angry knocks at midnight. But Reggie knew better. He knew the silence was just the eye of the storm. It was Friday night when the second strike came. Reggie was grading papers at the kitchen table, red pen in hand, when he heard it. A screech of tires. Slam of doors. Laughter. He stood up slowly, walked to the front window, and there it was, her Lexus. Back again. Parked at an angle like a flag planted on conquered land. Next to it, a black BMW and a cherry red sports car. 3 vehicles. All in his driveway. The sound of music thumped from her backyard, loud enough to rattle his windows. Party. And she had decided his property was part of it. Reggie's chest tightened. He thought of calling the tow company again, but this wasn't like before. This was deliberate. This was war. He grabbed his phone anyway. Within 20 minutes, headlights appeared at the corner. The tow truck rumbled up slowly, like a beast on a leash. The driver rolled down the window. "Same house?" he asked, a smirk tugging at his lips. Reggie nodded once. "Same house." Chains clinked. Engines roared. One by one, the cars were lifted, pulled, and hauled away. The music from Blythe's backyard masked the sound, until it didn't. A scream tore through the night. "What the hell are you doing?" Blythe came running around the side of her house, a group of party guests trailing behind her, clutching drinks. She looked wild, hair falling in strands, fury in her eyes. "That's private property," she shouted. Reggie stepped onto his porch, calm, steady, unshaken. "No," he said. "This is my property. And you've abused it long enough." She was shaking now, pointing, screaming. "You don't understand who I am. You don't understand the people I know." Reggie didn't flinch. "And you don't understand that respect isn't optional." The crowd behind her started whispering. Some were pulling out their phones, recording. And for the first time, Blythe realized. This wasn't just between her and Reggie anymore. The neighborhood was watching. The world was watching. The cops came again. She screamed louder this time, called him every name she could think of, accused him of harassment, intimidation, even theft. But the officer remained stone-faced. "Ma'am, we've told you before. If you park in his driveway without permission, he has the right to tow." "He's targeting me," she yelled. "No," Reggie said evenly. "I'm protecting what's mine." The officer turned to him. "Sir, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" Reggie hesitated, looking at Blythe's furious, trembling frame. Not yet, he thought. Not yet. But Blythe wasn't about to let it go. Later that night, as the tow truck's taillights disappeared and the party fizzled into silence, Reggie sat alone in his living room. His phone buzzed. A new email notification. He opened it and froze. It was from the HOA. Subject line: Violation notice. In bold letters, the email read, unauthorized removal of vehicles, property misuse, possible fine, $1,000. Reggie leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. So this was her next move. She couldn't win by logic. She couldn't win by law. So she was going to weaponize the system against him. For the first time, Reggie felt a flicker of doubt. Had he underestimated just how far she would go? But then he remembered her face when those cars were towed. The cracks in her perfect mask. The way her neighbors had looked at her, not with admiration, but with judgment. Reggie smiled to himself, bitter but steady. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Monday morning, the sun barely touched the roofs when Reggie walked out with his briefcase. His neighbors, Mr. Patel from across the street and an older couple walking their dog, paused just long enough to give him a nod of respect. "Morning, Mr. Carter," Patel said. "Morning," Reggie replied, though his chest felt heavy. When he reached his car, he saw it, a bright orange envelope under his wiper. Ticket. HOA violation notice. His hands trembled slightly as he ripped it open. Parking infraction. Unauthorized disturbance. Fine $250. He let out a bitter laugh. They weren't even hiding it now. This wasn't about rules. This was Blythe pulling strings. As he drove to school, his mind churned. He had dedicated his life to teaching kids to be fair, to believe in science and reason. But out here, in the quiet neighborhood he'd chosen for peace, he was learning the ugliest truth. People like Blythe didn't need to be right. They just needed power. That night, he came home to another envelope. This one taped to his front door in sloppy handwriting. "Stay in your place. Or else." His stomach tightened. The words weren't official. They were personal. Threat. He stepped inside, locked the door, and sat in the dark for a long while. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Lessons from childhood. "Son, there are fights you walk away from. And then there are fights you stand in, because if you back down once, they'll never stop coming." Reggie knew this was one of those fights. The next HOA meeting was crowded. More neighbors than usual had shown up, whispering, murmuring, their eyes darting between Reggie and Blythe at the long table. She sat at the center, pearl earrings gleaming, smile frozen in place, like a politician ready for a photo op. Reggie cleared his throat. "I need to address the repeated violations I've received." Blythe leaned forward, voice sugary. "Yes, Reggie. Please do. Because this community values order. And some of us don't seem to understand boundaries." Laughter rippled through a few of her supporters. Reggie scanned the room. Some people avoided his gaze, others gave him nods of quiet encouragement. "I've had my driveway blocked for weeks," Reggie said firmly. "I've spoken to the owner. I've asked for it to stop. Didn't. So I had the vehicles towed, legally with proof of property ownership. Now suddenly I'm receiving violation notices." He held up the orange slip. "Explain to me how following the law is a violation." A murmur swept through the room. One man in the back spoke up. "Yeah, Blythe, I saw your car there plenty of times." Another neighbor nodded. "She had people parking all over his lawn at that party." Blythe's smile flickered, just for a second. Then she straightened her posture. "We don't need to air petty disputes in front of everyone. The board has discretion to issue notices when someone creates disturbances." Reggie leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "A disturbance isn't me defending my property. A disturbance is someone thinking the rules don't apply to them." The silence that followed was heavy. Every eye in the room was on Blythe now, and for the first time she looked cornered. After the meeting, people approached Reggie quietly. "You did the right thing," one whispered. "She's been pushing people around for years," another said. A woman with tired eyes added, "You're the first one who stood up to her." That night, Reggie sat on his porch under the streetlight, sipping tea. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of relief. Maybe the tide was turning. Maybe people were starting to see the truth. But as midnight came and he stood to go inside, his headlights caught a glint of metal on the ground. He bent down. nail, dark, busty, placed carefully directly behind his rear tire. His blood ran cold. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just about parking anymore. This was war. Reggie stared at the nail in his hand, its jagged edge catching the streetlight. A chill ran through him. It wasn't just carelessness. It wasn't coincidence. Someone had placed it there deliberately. He checked the rest of his driveway. 3 more nails glimmered near the edge of the concrete. His jaw tightened. If he hadn't noticed, one of his tires could have blown out on the highway. At 70 miles per hour, that wasn't just property damage. That was his life. For the first time since this feud began, fear mixed with anger. He pocketed the nails, went inside, and set them on his kitchen counter like evidence. He thought about calling the police, but what would he say? My neighbor might have put nails in my driveway. He had no proof. And Blythe was smart enough never to leave fingerprints. The next morning, his classroom full of chattering kids seemed louder than usual. Reggie tried to focus on equations, but his mind kept drifting back home. Back to the nail glinting in the light. Back to the possibility that the next time, she wouldn't just target his car. That evening when he pulled into his driveway, he noticed something different. His trash cans, usually lined up neatly, were gone. He walked to the curb, checked the side of his house. Nothing. They had vanished. A small group of neighbors watched him from across the street. One woman, Marcy, finally called out, "Reggie!" She had those boys from her yard drag your cans over to her place earlier. Reggie sighed, rubbing his forehead. He didn't even have the strength to argue. He simply walked over, knocked on Blythe's door and waited. She opened it slowly, wearing that same perfect smile. "Can I help you?" "My trash cans," he said evenly. Her brows furrowed, feigning confusion. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play with me, Blythe. Give them back." She tilted her head, voice soft, mocking. "You're always so dramatic, Reggie. It's just trash." He leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "You're crossing a line you don't want to cross." For a second her mask cracked. Her eyes narrowed, lips tightened. Then she smiled again. "Be careful, Reggie. People don't like neighbors who make trouble." He walked away before his temper could boil over. But inside, a storm raged. 2 nights later, the real trap sprung. Reggie was driving home late, papers piled in his passenger seat, when he saw flashing blue lights ahead. His stomach dropped. A police cruiser blocked his driveway, and standing beside it was Blythe, arms folded, wearing that satisfied grin. "Mr. Carter," the officer said, approaching his window. "We received a report about a disturbance here tonight." Reggie's brows furrowed. "A disturbance? I just got off work." Blythe stepped forward, voice trembling with fake fear. "He's been threatening me, officer. Yelling outside my house. Harassing me. I'm afraid for my safety." Reggie's mouth went dry. He stared at her in disbelief. The performance was perfect, her voice breaking, her hands clutching her chest, tears welling in her eyes. She looked like the victim. And him. A black man standing in his own driveway, accused. He forced himself to breathe slowly, calmly. "Officer, I've done none of what she's claiming. She's been parking in my driveway for weeks. I've had to tow her car twice. This is retaliation." The officer studied him carefully. "Do you have proof of harassment, ma'am?" Blythe blinked rapidly, tears threatening to spill. I didn't record it. I was too scared." The silence stretched heavy. For a moment, Reggie thought the officer might actually believe her. Then from the shadows a voice called out. "That's not true." It was Marcy, the neighbor who'd seen the trash cans. She stepped forward, phone in hand. "I've been recording. She's the one who's been harassing him. I've got video of her cars in his driveway. I saw her boys take his trash cans. And I saw her out here tonight before he even got home." Blythe's face drained of color. Her lips parted but no sound came out. The officer's jaw tightened. He turned to her. "Ma'am, making false reports to the police is a serious offense." For the first time, Blythe didn't look smug. She looked small, cornered. Reggie exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from his chest. For weeks he had been fighting alone. But now, finally, someone had stepped forward. Still, as he pulled his car into his driveway, he knew this wasn't over. People like Blythe didn't stop because they lost once. They doubled down. And he had to be ready for whatever came next. The next morning, the whole neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Marcy's video had already spread like wildfire through the community group chat. Neighbors who once looked the other way now had proof. Blythe wasn't the victim she pretended to be. When Reggie stepped out to collect his mail, he felt the shift. Mrs. Kim from 2 doors down gave him a smile instead of the usual cautious glance. Mr. Patel raised a hand in quiet solidarity. For the first time, Reggie wasn't invisible. He wasn't alone. But across the street, Blythe stood at her mailbox, stiff as stone. Her sunglasses covered her eyes, but the tightness in her jaw told the story. She could feel the eyes on her, the whispers. The queen of the HOA board was no longer untouchable. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Reggie heard a sharp knock at his door. He opened it to find a folded piece of paper on the porch. No signature, just 3 words scribbled in thick black ink. "This isn't over." Reggie clenched the note in his fist. His stomach turned, not because of fear but because he knew it was true. Blythe wasn't the kind of person who let go. She was the kind who burned everything around her before admitting defeat. 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. The room was packed, standing room only. Blythe walked in last, head high, pearls gleaming, the picture of false confidence. She sat at the head table, pretending not to notice the phones aimed at her, recording every move. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice honeyed but trembling beneath the surface. "We've had some unfortunate misunderstandings in our community. Certain individuals," her eyes flicked to Reggie, "have created unnecessary conflict. But rest assured, the board has everything under control." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Someone in the back shouted, "Control? You called the cops on him for nothing." Another voice added, "You lied to us, Blythe." Her smile faltered. "Please, let's not get emotional." But Marcy stood up, phone in hand. "This is the video. See for yourselves." She pressed play. Blythe's own voice filled the room, mocking, dismissive, cruel. Her Lexus parked across Reggie's driveway. Her laugh as she dismissed his protests. Her fake tears when the police arrived. The room erupted. The people who had once followed her now turned against her.